think that Alphys is the knight. I know this is a pretty unpopular, potentially even widely hated theory. The most popular Roaring Knight candidates at this point, from what I can tell, are December, Azriel, Carol, and maybe even Rudy. I get it, especially for Des and Azriel. It would be an epic reveal for a couple of characters we've been dying to meet for years, a way to keep them close by in the story without ever revealing their identity. Alphys as the knight has been described as disappointing or even anticlimactic. I think that she's the perfect twist for Deltarune that nobody saw coming. I think that Alphys is a criminally overlooked character. She's extremely lore relevant to the story of Undertale and has a very complex story of development. I simply cannot imagine that she will remain in her state of negligible relevancy for the remainder of Deltarune. This video obviously contains major spoilers for both Deltarune and Undertale. Also, I've never made a game theory video before, let alone a Deltarune theory video, so please have mercy on my soul. This is just for fun. I am not a professional theorist, this is my first shot, so please give me a chance here, and please feel free to correct any facts I got wrong. This video is just to spur along a theory discussion I've personally been wanting to have, so please engage with me in the comments. I also want to preface this video by saying that many of the evidence points I have to support this theory are parallels drawn between Alphys' character in Undertale and Alphys' character in Deltarune. I understand that these are intended to be two distinct games, and the connection between them is still unclear. However, I think that the connection between them is significant. We see in all the existing theories about Gaster's influence on Deltarune due to the fate he met in Undertale. See device theory. We see how Sans obtains the photo of the fun gang at the festival that is found in his house in Undertale. We have a solid amount of evidence to assume that these worlds are connected somehow. I simply believe that there are too many parallels to be coincidental. Undertale is an echo of Deltarune. This whole line of Alphys Knight thinking was triggered in me by a very short but strange segment at the very beginning of Chapter 5. At the beginning of the festival, Kris, Noelle, and Susie can go into the church, which is decorated as a haunted house featuring mummies and vampires, which is kind of a weird, moderately sacrilegious choice on behalf of the church, if you think about it. If you head to the left of the room, Alphys will drop from the ceiling dressed as a vampire and scare the friends. Noelle screams, saying that she wasn't expecting this little scare because Alphys had never been a part of the haunted house before. This whole scene just struck me as strange and oddly significant. Especially weird is the way that, after concluding the first dialogue with Alphys, if you go back and talk to her again, Noelle continues to shake as if she's terrified. So, this little moment stuck in my head. There was something familiar about Alphys as she hung limply from the ceiling. A certain sprite of a certain mysterious character came to mind. Literally the thumbnail of this video, which hopefully caught your attention. And I haven't seen anybody talk about this particular parallel yet. There is a very specific angle of Alphys as she rotates on the rope, where, when placed side by side, Alphys distinctly resembles this particular sprite of the knight. Let's go through the physical similarities. She has 3 spikes on the back of her head, just like the knight. The sleeves of her cloak dangle down below her legs, just like the knight's arms. Even the position of her tail perfectly matches the position of the knight's sharp hip. They also both have 4 fingers on each hand. In this drooping position, the knight even drips some substance from its head, just like a vampire would drip blood from its mouth. But there are a couple of distinctions here. Alphys has no antlers, unlike the knight. She is also clearly a completely different size than the knight. I'll come back and address these distinctions very soon. In the discussions I've seen about the identity of the knight, players often call attention to whether or not a specific knight candidate would make sense narratively as a reveal. Would it be disappointing? Does it connect to the message of the story? Does it suddenly bring forward an otherwise insignificant character in a nonsensical way? We want this reveal to make sense and bring a satisfying ending to an almost decade-long mystery. Upon first glance, Alphys can be perceived as one of these characters that just simply wouldn't make sense for the big reveal. She's just the nerdy, anime-loving schoolteacher. In Undertale, she's a socially awkward scientist with a massive crush on the local warrior who sends you really annoying text messages every few minutes. She's overall not the most popular character, even disliked from what I've garnered. I think Alphys is criminally overlooked as a major character. I recommend you go watch this video. Alphys is awesome, actually. It gives a great synopsis on the depth of Alphys' character in Undertale and how significant she really is. She is directly responsible for possibly the most bone-chilling reveal in Undertale, the True Lab. The horrors, produced by her ever-good intentions, are half-dead monsters she experimented on according to Asgore's orders. She is even responsible for the creation of Flowey, another horrible result of her determination experiments. Thus, she is chiefly responsible for kicking off the entire story of Undertale. She's proven herself capable of great destruction, even if she does not intend it. I think her backstory is one of the most interesting in the entire Undertale cast. At this point in time, we still have not seen her significance shown in Deltarune, but I don't think this is a matter of if we will see it, it's a matter of when. So yes, I do think that Alphys makes sense narratively as a candidate for the knight's true identity. In order to properly analyze Alphys' character, I'm going to refer back to Undertale as well as the current state of Deltarune. With 5 chapters released, it doesn't reveal too much about Alphys' character. Really all we know so far about her is that she's Kris's teacher, referred to the job by Toriel. She's a huge nerd, generally extremely anxious and awkward, and has a crush on Undyne. Nothing too significant. Undertale, on the other hand, reveals immense depth of character, so I'll be referring back to her traits in Undertale. I think this is fair to do, since basic character traits seem to be persistent across Undertale and Deltarune. For example, Toriel's motherly love, Undyne's fierce desire to protect, or Alphys' love for Undyne. I want to cover 3 assets of Alphys' personality in this portion of the video. I'll explain where each of these traits originate from, then tie them back to her identity as the knight. Number 1. Her desire for another universe. Alphys is known to be a story lover, particularly anime. She goes on long rants about her favorite stories and has trouble controlling her excitement over them. She has anime posters in her lab, anime VHS tapes in her laboratory, and a motivational poster from a video game on her classroom wall. People who immerse themselves in stories often have the strong desire to escape to another universe, a place where anything is possible, where your real-life inhibitions do not exist, and you can be exactly the hero you desire to be. In Mediton's quiz question about Alphys' crushes, when the player chooses don't know, Mediton goes into Alphys' belief that someone is out there for her, someone who will share a mutual romantic interest, joking about this theoretical person. She becomes embarrassed and says, "Hey, I've done research about this. There are alternative universes out there. Someday, maybe I could meet them." So, Alphys seems to believe in alternative realities where she can achieve her dreams and become who she truly wants to be. In Deltarune's story, the Dark Worlds may serve just this purpose. When in the Dark World, Alphys can act as the knight. She can become extremely powerful and crush any enemy she pleases, just like the heroes in her favorite stories. She can laugh in Susie's face when threatened by her, instead of cowering like she does in the classroom in the Light World. Alphys is also known to grant other monsters wishes to achieve their desired form. Alphys is the creator of Mediton, an ideal body created for a ghost who wanted to become something more. So in Deltarune, who's to say she didn't carry out this wish for herself? Number 2. Her desire to protect and her ability to lead in the worst of times. For this point, I'm going to harken back to a specific neutral route ending of Undertale, referred to as the Queen Alphys ending. In this ending, the genocide route is aborted in Hotland, leaving Alphys alive while many other characters are slaughtered. She is reported to have escaped Hotland and attempted to evacuate as many monsters as possible to safety. She becomes a capable, composed leader in the face of a genocide. In the discourse about Alphys' Knight that I've read, I often see people quickly dismiss Alphys due to her shy, anxious, and weak nature that is shown upon her introduction. However, as the story goes on, especially in this particular ending, we see that she is extremely capable and not afraid to take action to protect those she cares about. Now, let's get back to Deltarune. If an apocalyptic event were to befall Hometown, where are the citizens supposed to evacuate to? The shelter, which is exactly where the knight flies Undyne off to at the end of chapter 3. If the knight really is Alphys, we can interpret this scene as the knight trying to get her love, Undyne, to safety. Maybe she didn't want Undyne, her crush, to get involved in the dangers of the Dark Worlds. Maybe she's anticipating the apocalyptic event of all apocalyptic events, the Roaring, and gets Undyne to safety while she has the chance. Just a side point, Alphys would need the code to the shelter in order to get inside. I don't think this is unlikely for Alphys, a school teacher, to have the code to the shelter. A teacher would absolutely need access to this in case of an emergency to get their students to safety. Number 3. Her desire to insert herself into the story as the heroine. There is a very, very interesting conclusion to the Hotland and Core adventure as revealed by Mediton and Undertale. They say, "This was all just a show, an act. Alphys has been playing you for a fool the whole time. As she watched you on the screen, she grew attached to your adventure, so she decided to insert herself into your story." Alphys had designed all the puzzles Frisk had to encounter, and guided him through as if she knew nothing about them, so she could save you from dangers that didn't exist. I think this is incredibly important. Alphys inserted herself into the story where she was not necessary. She created barriers that didn't need to exist, just for the sake of the enjoyment of her own involvement. Perhaps her involvement as the knight is similar. She can't help but bring herself into the story of the Thun Gang as they live out their dreams in the Dark World. Standing by simply would not be in her nature, as shown by the extreme lengths she went to get involved with Frisk's story in Undertale, except this time she is not the hero of the story. The concept of transformation, or even possession, to fulfill a dream is actually very common in both Deltarune and Undertale. In Undertale, we have Petterz, Alphys' own creation. She built the robot body and made many iterative improvements to give a ghost its chance at living inside its dream form. Spamton in Deltarune transforms into Spamton Neo, and while transforming he says, "Kid, I'm busy becoming God." Pink in Deltarune is a ghost that possesses the body of a doll. She says, "Before this body, I was a nobody, a ghost. In the dark world, she gets to be the sensation she always dreamed of." Noelle expresses her desire to transform by growing big angel wings and flying off into the sunset. This theme of transformation to a perfect form is repeated over and over. I wouldn't be surprised if the night were yet another example of this. For the sake of this section, let's imagine that the night is Alphys' own design for her dream body, a sort of form that she created and takes on while in the dark world, similar to how Kris and Susie have unique warrior forms while in the dark world. It could be a kind of mech, maybe inspired by one of her hero stories that she loves. Her tiny body could fit in the chest and her head in the helmet, somehow piloting the long limbs from within. Let's take a look at the similarities between the physical form of the knight and Alphys' creations in Undertale. Petterz Neo, Alphys' own design she created as the ghost's ideal form for it to possess, bears resemblance to the knight. Sharp shoulders and hips, long arms and legs, a pointed toe, even some kind of sharp horns. Just like Alphys created this dream body for the ghost so it could truly be itself, she created the knight as her own dream body. Now let's address the elephant in the room, the antlers. Many people theorize that these antlers are intended to communicate that, without a doubt, the knight must be a member of the Holiday family, most often theorized to be Des. Before jumping there, I want to look back at other designs created by Undertale's scientists that show deer-like imagery. The most prominent example of this is the determination extractor found in the True Lab. This giant contraption distinctly resembles a deer skull, thanks to clay theory for pointing this out. The tubes extending from the top even appear like horns or antlers. A certain monster found in Snowdon seems to confirm that this machine is intended to represent a deer, gift rot. This mutated deer creature bears stunning resemblance to the determination extractor, and I think this is intentional. There is some discourse around whether or not Alphys had designed the determination extractor, or if Gaster had designed it and Alphys simply followed his blueprint. We also see this deer skull-like design in the Gaster blasters used as an attack by Sans. So even if this deer design language was first pioneered by Gaster, Alphys is intimately familiar with it and constructed the machine according to this design. This could be a very, very interesting parallel between Alphys' creations in both Undertale and Deltarune. It's commonly believed that the knight is responsible for opening the dark fountains in chapters 1, 2, and 4. Kris appears to have opened the fountains in chapters 3 and 5. So let's take a look at Alphys' location relative to each fountain when they were discovered. Fountain number 1 was opened in the supply closet at the back of the school, Alphys' place of employment. She, a staff member, would be the most likely person in town to have access to this closet, besides Toriel, who is also a teacher. She also even directly prompts Kris and Susie to go check out the closet, ignoring Noelle when she tries to join in. In this moment, she becomes the instigator for the entire story of Deltarune by revealing the location of the first fountain to Kris and Susie. There even appears to be a trail of paper scattered on the ground, laid out as if to create a path to lure in Kris and Susie and lead them into the darkness. It's almost like somebody is trying to set the prophecy in motion. Kris's discussion with her in the back alley after the events in the first Dark World is strange as well. First, Alphys accuses Kris of skipping class. In the very next breath, she offers him a reward for trying so hard to find the chalk. It almost feels like these two statements are in jest. Fountain number 2 was opened in the computer lab at the library. This one is a bit tricky. Kris, Susie, Noelle, and Birdley leave Alphys' class and discuss going to the library to study. This gives Alphys the opportunity to overhear where the gang is going to go next. Kris and Susie first stop by the closet Dark World, while Noelle and Birdley are headed to the library. When Kris leaves the Dark World briefly to collect the junk from the unused classroom to bring it back to the closet, they can listen in on a discussion between Alphys and Toriel. So, Alphys is still in the school at this point. At this point, we can be sure that Alphys sees Kris and the giant ball of junk on his head. Kris then proceeds to go right back into the Dark World in front of Alphys, directly in her line of vision. I believe this is the only time in the entire game that we've seen Kris enter a Dark World while someone outside of the core gang is watching. I find this super suspicious, and I think it might imply that Kris knows Alphys is already aware of this closet dark world. But now, after this interaction, Alphys must make it back to the library and open the dark fountain in the computer room without Noelle and Birdley seeing. By the presence of the closet in the computer room that says a large person could fit inside, I'm assuming that the knight hid here to create a dark world while Noelle and Birdley were in the lab, then later snuck out. I've seen a few theories of the purpose of this closet, but I genuinely do believe that the purpose is to hide the knight. Noelle and Birdley, awake from the dark world, already sat down at the desk with their books and papers laid out. This implies that the dark world was opened up when they were already in the room ready to study. So I have to assume that the knight was already hiding somewhere in the room when they arrived. So, how on earth does Alphys get from the school where she was talking to Toriel all the way to the library before Noelle and Birdley, when they left the school before her? For some people, this disproves Alphys' ability to be the knight. I, on the other hand, don't think it's quite improbable enough. I'm going to give a few different possible explanations. Maybe Noelle and Birdley stopped by one of their homes to pick up a missing book before going to the library, giving Alphys time to arrive before them. Maybe Noelle and Birdley went upstairs in the library to retrieve a book, and Alphys entered the computer lab while they were up there. And then maybe, this one is significantly more outlandish, but I'll put it out there anyways, the library is immediately to the left of the school. We know that the town has some sort of underground bunker made for the evacuation of townsfolk in the case of disaster. Maybe, just maybe, there is an entrance to this underground bunker system from within the school. What better place for an escape route than where all the town's children reside on a daily basis? This is something that Alphys would have direct access to as a teacher. Maybe she was able to navigate her way quickly to the library using this underground system and enter the library a different way. Finally, after the events of the Dark World in Chapter 2, Alphys can be found outside the police station where she crashed her bike, immediately to the left of the library. The bike is facing away from the library, almost like she rushed out as quick as possible and in her hurry crashed her bike. It is implied that she crashed her bike due to spotting Undyne and being distracted by her attractiveness. But I still find this placement and timing suspicious. Even more suspicious is how Alphys was seemingly riding in the direction of the police tape that blocks the exit to the town. I don't have an explanation for that last point, but it just adds to the strangeness of the situation. Finally, fountain number 4 in the church. On the day of the church service, Alphys turns up. She expresses that she usually never goes to church, but Undyne happened to invite her today. So Alphys is in the location of the 4th fountain on the day that it opened, in a location she usually never frequents. And apparently Undyne invited her, who is nowhere to be found or to deny this claim, as she was taken away by the knight the night before. Very strange. It is said that dark worlds bear reflections of their creator. This could tell us that the creator of the church fountain was strongly influenced by Gerson, who appears in the dark world, despite having died. Well, Alphys is Gerson's replacement at the school. We don't have evidence of Alphys ever having known Gerson before his death, but she is his successor, who she may have been influenced by, as he left behind many of his writings. Now, who was Alphys a successor for in Undertale? Gaster. In both stories, Alphys is the successor of a majorly lore-significant, highly intelligent and powerful character. If we follow this parallel and recall how strongly Alphys was influenced by Gaster's work in Undertale, it's not hard to believe that she would be affected the same way by her predecessor in Deltarune. We have evidence that Kris is in cahoots with the knight, and that they might share a common goal. There are many videos on this topic, so I won't go too in-depth. Let's think back to the discussion between Alphys and Toriel at school. Toriel asks Alphys if Kris has been behaving okay lately, and Alphys quickly lies and says he's doing just fine. This is the day after Kris disappeared from her class, and the same day that Kris slept through her entire class. One explanation for this lie is that, since Toriel referred Alphys to this job, she doesn't want to displease Toriel by telling the truth. This just seems strange to me. Toriel came to Alphys specifically to ask if Kris is doing okay. It would have been more responsible of Alphys to admit to Toriel that Kris was indeed not acting normally. The honesty likely would be appreciated by Toriel, not getting Alphys in any trouble. To me, it seems like Alphys is covering for Kris in this case. If Alphys really is the knight and Kris is working with the knight, this is a great example of the knight helping Kris maintain their freedom to keep entering the dark world, instead of getting grounded by Toriel. I want to quickly harken back to Noelle's blog, which can be found in the Spamton sweepstakes under the name Holiday Girl 1225. In this blog post, Noelle talks about how if you download the right mods, you can raise birds, hamsters, cars, cartoon characters, and even more. Mew Mew Queen's Simpton Family Pack is a great example of how far things can go. We can assume Mew Mew Queen is Alphys, as she offers Kris her prize collection of Simpton CDs in the games. So Alphys is a modder. Let's take a look at what kind of player Noelle is. Noelle is good at discovering glitches. She writes, "I've never gotten a special egg before. In fact, I'd never even heard of it at all. I sat there for an hour waiting to see what it would turn out to be. Maybe I would be the first one to discover a brand new cat. But what was weird is, the egg never hatched. I started to worry that it was some kind of glitch, so I decided to try and get rid of it before it hurt my computer. And that's where things got really strange." So, Noelle has a habit of breaking the boundaries of the game, while Alphys has a habit of modifying the game to suit her interests. I think this takes on significant meaning with the release of Chapter 5's Weird Route. Clearly, Noelle's ability to break through barriers doesn't apply to just the game cat Petterz, but the real world as well, as she guides Kris through the lake. If we apply this same game real-life connection to Alphys, we can imagine that Alphys may have some kind of method of tailoring reality to her interests, like modding reality, like perhaps becoming the knight in the dark world. I wanted to save this one for last. I highly recommend you check out this video by JR Vanity that explains how the events of Undertale mirror the events of Deltarune in some very pointed ways, but inverted and backwards and spun around, or something. To give a very quick summary of this theory, each chapter in Deltarune refers to different levels of Undertale, but in reverse. A few examples. At the very end of Undertale's genocide route, we meet Kara in Total Darkness, a character that can see beyond the bounds of the game. We begin Deltarune Chapter 1 in the darkness as the Soul speaking to Gaster, another being who can see beyond the bounds of the game. Kara destroys and Gaster creates. The second to last part of Undertale features the core. Chapter 2 of Deltarune is Cyberworld, so these two areas are very thematically similar, techie and sciencey. They also both have a diva-style robotic end boss, Queen and Mediton. Chapter 3 is the key to Alphys' Night here. JR Vanity points out that at the end of Deltarune Chapter 3, we fight Tenna and then Undyne appears. In Undertale Hotland, we depart from Undyne and then meet Mediton. The perfect reverse. Now who appears between each encounter? Between fighting Tenna and Undyne appearing, the knight appears. Who appears between departing from Undyne and meeting Mediton? Alphys. The creator of this video dismisses the claim as a joke and claims not to actually believe it, but if you couldn't tell, I'm convinced. Finally, if we take this theory even further, let's examine how Alphys' overall position in Deltarune mirrors that of Undertale. In Undertale, Alphys replaces Gaster as the royal scientist who is forgotten. In Deltarune, she replaces Gerson, who is fondly remembered. Meanwhile, Gerson is alive in Undertale, while Gaster is almost certainly a looming presence in the background of Deltarune. To me, this is too significant of a pattern for Alphys to just be a nerdy schoolteacher. She's too closely related to the two extremely powerful characters as their successors. Now, after all that, of course, there are still some big remaining questions, like why would Alphys try to cause the roaring? Why does she drop black shards? Why did Alphys first enter a dark world? Why did she overthrow 3 out of 4 of the card kings, as Sham tells us? To be completely honest, I don't know. I don't think we're far enough along in this story to understand the knight's motivations. I think it will be revealed very soon though, and I wanted to point out my observations as soon as I could in hopes of making a good prediction and bringing forward a controversial theory. So, thank you so much for watching my first ever Deltarune theory.